Namaskar and thank you very much for joining us here on News Night this Sunday night on the auspicious day of Makar Sankranti, dedicated to the sun god Surya. Here's wishing all of you and your families a very happy Makar Sankranti, Pongal or Magh Bihu as you call it. The observance is called in different parts of our country. Now, on the program tonight, we'll be looking at the war in Ukraine and the continued attacks by Russia on Ukrainian electricity infrastructure. But let's, as always, begin with the headlines. A plane carrying 72 people on board from capital Kathmandu crashes in Pokhara in Nepal. All on board are confirmed dead. Hundreds of Nepalese soldiers involved in the operation to clear the crash site on the Seti River Gorge. Just 1.5 kilometers from the airport, Prime Minister Modi expresses his grief over the loss of lives in the incident. Russia fires a new wave of missiles at Ukraine, targeting energy infrastructure across Ukraine, including Dnipro. Much of Ukraine is under an emergency blackout. Missiles hit power infrastructure in several cities. At least 20 people dead in Dnipro. Ukraine's President Zelensky calls for more weapons to fight Ukraine. World Economic Forum's annual meeting to kickstart in the Swiss ski resort city of Davos from Monday. The 53rd annual event's theme is Cooperation in a Fragmented World. The meeting assumes significance after COVID-19 pandemic, growing US-China hostility. Russia's relentless attack on Ukraine is expected to dominate deliberations, however. US President Joe Biden declares emergency for California due to winter storms. US National Weather Service forecasts waves of heavy precipitation, heavy rain to continue, with a threat of flooding, mudslides and landslides. Prime Minister Narendra Modi flags off the Bharat Express train connecting Secunderabad with Visakhapatnam via video conference, and he says that the Bharat will link the shared heritage of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. The Bharat trains are indigenously designed and equipped with state-of-the-art passenger amenities. The Indian Army celebrates the 75th Army Day in Bengaluru. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh lauds the armed forces for ensuring the country's territorial integrity and upholding the rich tradition of unmatched bravery and sacrifice. India completes a clean sweep, beating Sri Lanka by 317 runs, breaking a world record and breaking a record for the biggest margin of victory in ODIs. Virat Kohli and Shubman Gill hit stunning centuries. Virat Kohli slams a masterly unbeaten 166. And in hockey, in the Hockey World Cup 2023, India and England play out a draw in Pool D in an encounter at the Birsa Munda Stadium in Rourkela in Odisha. Our top story, a plane carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara in Nepal this morning. All on board, including the passengers and the 4 crew members, are dead. The plane, a twin-engine ATR-72, crashed between the old and the new airports in the western Nepal city. It was operated by Yeti Airlines and had taken off from Kathmandu. Among the dead include 15 foreign nationals. 5 of them are Indian, 4 Russian, 2 Koreans and 1 each from Argentina, Ireland, Australia and France.
In a tragic incident, a plane carrying 72 people on board crashed near Pokhara International Airport in Nepal, sending shockwaves across the globe. Sunday morning saw Nepal's worst crash in several years. The ATR-72 aircraft of Yeti Airlines had 4 crew, 2 pilots and 2 air hostesses on board. The aircraft crashed between the old airport and the Pokhara International Airport. Government authorities mobilized security personnel in rescue efforts at the incident site. Nepalese Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal Prachanda expressed sorrow over the plane crash in Pokhara and called an emergency meeting of his Council of Ministers, directing intense rescue operations. Hundreds of Nepalese soldiers were involved in the operation at the crash site in the gorge of the Seti River, just 1.5 kilometers from the airport.
The incident was tragic. All forces are deployed for rescue operations. The investigation is going on now.
According to the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal, the aircraft took off from Kathmandu's Tribhuvan International Airport at 10:33 am and crash landed at the airport in Pokhara, a major tourist destination in the Himalayan nation. The crash is Nepal's deadliest since March 2018, when a US Bangla Dash 8 turboprop flight from Dhaka crashed on landing in Kathmandu, killing 51 of the 71 people on board. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed deep grief over the loss of lives in this crash in Nepal. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Pained by the tragic air crash in Nepal in which precious lives have been lost, including Indian nationals. In this hour of grief, my thoughts and prayers are with the bereaved families." The External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, expressed his grief over the tragic aeroplane crash in Nepal's Pokhara. The minister said, and I quote, he is deeply grieved by the air crash and that his thoughts were with the affected families. And now we are joined by Shweta Singh, Prasar Bharati correspondent based in Kathmandu. Thank you very much, Shweta, for being with us. Is there some clarity on what caused the crash?
Mark, till now, actually immediate cause of accident cannot be clear. It's not at all clear right now. Though government of Nepal had created a 5-membered committee to investigate the matter, but as the weather was clear today, so it's very hard to determine what can be the cause of this accident.
Indeed, but what arrangements are being made to identify bodies? Surely they would be charred, and 15 are foreign nationals.
Actually, Mark, as you told, 15 are foreign nationals, in which 5 were Indian, 2 Korean, 4 Russian, 1 each from France, Argentina, Ireland. Actually, the many bodies are beyond recognition.
Yes.
Rescue operators took out the body from the crash site, and the crash site was like, if you see, the plane was like billowing fire, and it was like full of smoke.
Okay.
Rescue operation was also very difficult because the way accident happened, plane straightway crashing and then turning and toppling into gorge of River Seti. The terrain made rescue operation very tough, and the bodies which were brought out, most were like you could not recognize. So by the list of passengers name, one could know these many passengers were from they were this national through their passports as registered in Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal. They have actually, even your Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal have issued helpline number, the way Indian Embassy have issued helpline number. So the families of the aggrieved family can call the helpline number and inquire about the dead.
So there is a high incidence, Shweta, of plane crashes in Nepal, and it's obviously difficult terrain to fly in, but could there also be lapses on the part of the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal in, clearing some of these planes for flying, which may not be of the highest standards?
Actually, Mark, as I can inform you, plane crashes is not uncommon in Nepal, because if you see last 10 years, like it is like 11th airplane crash. So in a way, I would say because of the tough terrain, the terrain is really harsh, and even winds are turbulent most of the time. But today, as for today, I would say the weather was not at all turbulent. but as the reasons are not very clear, so now we cannot say what could be the exact reason of this accident. But I would say because the domestic flights, what people take in Nepal are of small aircrafts. They are really small aircrafts. So bearing any sort of turbulence becomes difficult for small aircrafts to tolerate, because you see international aircrafts are a bit bigger size, so they can manage that turbulence, they can handle that, but small aircraft can easily topple up. So because small aircrafts are mostly used in domestic flights, I think it's one's opinion, I would say, maybe that cannot manage the turbulence. Else, technically, I wouldn't say, because all civil authorities, civil aviation authority are working on their best to give their best performance. But accidents are not uncommon here in Nepal.
So, final question, are there any restrictions during the winter months because the altitude is quite high in Nepal for air travel?
As such, frankly speaking, Mark, here in Nepal, when I'm here in Kathmandu, weather is really beautiful. In daytime, it is very, very sunny, that we don't get to see in Delhi or in North India. So, day is very cool, but at night, it's like very cold and the weather changes. And morning is also very cold, the weather is very different. So, that way it is predicting the weather, it's a bit difficult. So, I wouldn't say exactly whether is to be presently responsible for such crash, at least for today's crash.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Shweta Singh, Prasar Bharati correspondent based in Kathmandu. Thank you for your updates. Moving on then to our next story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi flagged off the Vande Bharat Express train between Secunderabad and Visakhapatnam, and the Prime Minister said that the Vande Bharat, it's a symbol of New India's capability and resolve. Let's look at this report.
कनेक्टिविटी का स्पीड से और इन दोनों का सबका विकास से सीधा संबंध है। कनेक्टिविटी अपने साथ विकास की संभावनाओं का विस्तार करती है। जहां जहां गति है वहां प्रगति है, और जब प्रगति होती है तो समृद्धि तय है।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi flagged off the Vande Bharat Express connecting Secunderabad with Visakhapatnam through a video link on Sunday. Highlighting the centre's thrust on connectivity and infrastructure development, the Prime Minister said that the Vande Bharat Express is a symbol of the resolve and potential of New India and shows that the country seeks the best in everything.
ये वंदे भारत एक्सप्रेस उस भारत का प्रतीक है जो सब कुछ श्रेष्ठ चाहता है, उत्तम चाहता है। ये वंदे भारत एक्सप्रेस उस भारत का प्रतीक है जो अपने हर नागरिक को बेहतर सुविधाएं देना चाहता है। ये वंदे भारत एक्सप्रेस उस भारत का प्रतीक है जो गुलामी की मानसिकता से बाहर निकलकर आत्मनिर्भरता की तरफ बढ़ रहा है।
This train will be the 8th Vande Bharat Express to be introduced by the Indian Railways and will be the first one connecting the two Telugu-speaking states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, covering a distance of around 700 kilometers. Travel time from Secunderabad to Visakhapatnam will be reduced to 8.5 hours from 12.5 hours.
खास बात इस ट्रेन की है जो स्पीड को लेकर है, जो हम सभी को जर्नी को काफ़ी आसान बना रहा है।
बिल्कुल फ्लाइट वाला फील है, साथ में आपका व्यू भी बहुत बढ़िया है, आप आराम से देख पा रहे हैं, आपको कोई भी ऑब्स्टेकल्स नहीं है और कंफर्ट सीट भी बहुत ही ज़्यादा कंफर्टेबल है।
The introduction of the train will help boost tourism in the region and provide a comfortable and faster mode of travel. Vande Bharat 2.0 is equipped with more advancements and improved features such as reaching a speed of 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 52 seconds and a maximum speed of up to 180 kilometers per hour. The improved Vande Bharat Express will weigh 392 tons when compared to the previous version of 430 tons. It will also have a Wi-Fi content on demand facility. Every coach has 32-inch screens providing passengers information and infotainment compared to a 24-inch screen in the previous version. Vande Bharat Express will also be environmentally friendly as the ACs will be 15% more energy efficient. With dust-free clean air cooling of the traction motor, travel will become more comfortable. A side recliner seat facility provided only to executive class passengers earlier will now be made available for all classes. Executive coaches have the added feature of 180-degree rotating seats. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Moving on then to our next story. The death count from the missile strike in Dnipro has crossed 20, and the Russian missile hit an apartment building in Dnipro, and other strikes also caused power outages and blackouts across the war-torn country of Ukraine. Now, the World Economic Forum gets underway in Davos from Monday, and the Ukraine House over there, it's highlighting Russian atrocities during the war. Let's look at this report. Russia seems unrelenting as it takes advantage of winter woes facing Ukraine. In a major missile attack on Saturday, Russia destroyed a 9-story apartment block in Dnipro. At least 20 people were killed. Vital energy facilities have been hit across the country, according to Ukrainian officials. Several people were rescued from underground after the apartment block was reduced to rubble. As smoke billowed into the sky, at least 70 people, including 6 children, were wounded in the attack. 35 people are still missing at the time of this report.
On January 14, 2023, a missile strike was carried out against Ukraine's military and infrastructure sites. All assigned objects were hit. The targets of the strike have been achieved.
Kiev residents took shelter underground after air alarm sirens sounded above ground. Russia fired a second wave of missiles on Saturday after morning airstrikes hit critical infrastructure in Kiev and eastern city Kharkiv. Moscow has been pounding Ukraine's energy infrastructure with missiles and drones since October. Blackouts and disruptions to central heating and running water are causing grave distress to citizens in the icy winter. Ukrainian officials also said missiles struck critical infrastructure facilities in eastern Kharkiv that borders Russia and western Lviv that borders Poland. Volunteer doctors treated people in a Bakhmut bomb shelter on Saturday, January 14, as explosions echoed through the frontline city.
So mostly each visit, one doctor can provide up to 40-45 consultations. So it's let's say every day our mobile clinic can see up to 100 and 110 patients here in Bakhmut, because a lot of patients will have the consultations of 2, 3, 4 doctors at the same time.
Russian forces have repositioned their attacks on the smaller town of Soledar after failing to take Bakhmut. Russia could raise the upper age limit for citizens to be conscripted into the armed forces this spring. Moscow is planning to boost Russian troops by 30%. President Vladimir Putin has already backed this proposal last month to raise the age range for mandatory military service from 21 to 30 rather than 18 to 27. World leaders will start descending on Davos for the January 16 to 21 annual conference of the World Economic Forum. 52 heads of state and government and at least 56 finance ministers, 19 central bank governors, 30 trade ministers and 35 foreign ministers are expected to deliberate matters of global concern at Davos. 39 international agencies, including the UN, IMF and WTO, will be represented.
And I think this image today is particularly relevant if we take in mind what happened yesterday in Dnipro, where there was a bombardment of a private home. People were inside. The apartment block has been completely destroyed. An incredible tragedy, a war crime, and something we want to speak about specifically because the type of missile that was used in this attack yesterday on Dnipro is a type of missile that Ukraine has no defense against.
Ukraine is making its presence felt at the forum with a stall displaying the atrocities committed by Russia. Avoiding the risk of a global recession in 2023, increasing efforts to tackle climate change and factors exacerbated by the Ukraine war, and sanctions on Russia will be the key topics of discussion. Newsnight Desk, DD India. So that brings us to In Focus tonight, and we are focusing on this. Ukraine ups the ante and Russia ups ante and Ukraine holds firm. Russia ups the ante and Ukraine holds firm. And to discuss this, we have with us Vidyabhushan Soni, former Indian ambassador to Ukraine, and Colonel Dr. TPK Pillai, research fellow at IDSA. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Ambassador Soni, let me start with you. Now, Russia is not strong enough to win this war, and Ukraine is not weak enough to lose it. So, do you see a tipping point emerging anytime soon?
First of all, let me say that if left to themselves, Ukraine and Russia will be a mismatch, because Russian forces and Russian resources are 5-to-1 ratio. So if they were fighting among themselves, it would be an easy victory. But Ukraine is supported by Western countries, particularly Europe and the United States. So without that help, they will not be able to do it. But today, what is happening is they're trying to put pressure on Russia to come to terms and to give leeway to Ukraine. Why would they do it? Because after all, they have paid a heavy price. They have been fighting the war for a year. And there seems to be no solution in sight. There is a possibility of talks taking place. That's not happening, because conditions have been put by Ukrainian president for start of these talks. So today what you see is a stalemate. The timing is important, because this is the height of winter in Russia and also in Europe, particularly in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is not self-sufficient in energy field. They have to import all their requirement for gas and also petroleum. What used to happen earlier, I remember in 2000 or so, Russia used to give them, supply them gas at a much reduced price, because they were brotherly nations. But once the problem started, they started asking for market price for that. Back then, the gas pipeline for supply of gas to Germany used to pass through Ukraine. You will be surprised that without telling anybody, Ukrainian authorities would siphon off gas through the pipe which was going through their territory. So Russia then brought out this problem, and then they said, okay, we will pay you. So basically, this is the height of winter, and the Russian authorities, Russian leadership is trying to suffocate them by trying to target any possible sources of using those energy.
So whether that's a legitimate military exercise, whether these are legitimate military targets or not, we'll have to see. Dr. Pillai, what would you say? I mean, from a military standpoint, what is Russia counting on? Are they expecting the West's weapon support to Ukraine to end at some stage?
Like the ambassador brought out very clearly, one-on-one, Ukraine stood no chance against Russia. So the war has been prolonged by the support that has been openly and blatantly provided by the West. And the ones who are suffering in this entire conflict has been the Ukrainian people alone, who actually paid the entire price. And what you're seeing now happening in Dnipro also is a price that the civilians are paying here. Now, there are allegations. If you try to go to the websites of the Russian side, you find that they would say that they've never targeted this complex. They were only looking at energy, the infrastructure, these assets. This pattern of, if you read the battle that has taken place from the early days where the special military operations was actually launched, their objectives have constantly changed. And with the fall of the retaking that has taken place of regions that actually were under Russian control, firstly the Russians moved away from trying to seize Kyiv. And then the second half around September, I think it's that they lost Kharkiv and regions in that area. And now this push, and then they focused deeper into Ukrainian territory and started using those, troops and missiles that actually were striking deep in. And now this is like the 11th or 12th attack on infrastructure of the energy. Like the ambassador brought out, energy. They're dependent really, and this is it's a very harsh winter. So their aim was to actually destroy a large amount of energy infrastructure. And now the Russians are claiming that the missile was never fired by them that killed the civilians in the apartment complex. Whereas there has been a wave of retaliation against this territory. And also, sometime we've heard stories of this Wagner group entering this, and which has actually turned the tide, and now they are actually moving in towards the salt mines of Soledar and the for Bakhmut, which is again on an important axis to recapture. So most recently, they're paying them about $4,000 per convict, and they're promised freedom at the end of 6. So the fighting is quite professional in terms of.
Yes. Okay,
so it's something that this is an interesting turn in the war, and I don't see an end to it, because the peace formula proposed by Zelensky was actually dismissed outright, where they demanded that territories that the Russians had annexed in September, I don't think it is acceptable to the Russians at all. So, and now the only people who are going to suffer in the entire thing is not Zelensky or the West or the Russians, for that matter. It's the people of Ukraine.
People of Ukraine is what you're saying. Yes, Ambassador Soni, according to Statista, it's a website, Putin's approval ratings there in Russia were 81% in December. That's up from 77% in September. So now, if these figures are a true representation of the sentiment on the ground, it clearly shows that Putin's position is strengthening. What do you think are the reasons for his support?
Well, first of all, they feel that the Western world is really muscling in and trying to put pressure on them. Basically, I do not think he is that popular as the figures are given out. I think the discontent is definitely there, because who is paying the price? The youngsters and the people who are on the street. So maybe it gives an indication about 2-3% rise in this popularity. But people are fed up, because they feel that they should not get into a protracted war like that for so long time. But you mentioned about the timing. Let me also tell you there are 2-3 things which have happened in the meanwhile. First of all, the supply of tanks, particularly from Britain, and possibility of talking of the German tanks coming via Poland. So these are also provocations, because if the Western countries are trying to put pressure, and this is their way of Russian way of teaching them a lesson. Let me also say that Kharkov is one of the areas where major tank producing industries are set up by Ukraine. Would you believe that it is from the Kharkiv plant that Pakistan was supplied $500 million worth of T-80 UD tanks during my time? I'm talking about, I was there from 97 to 2002, and that is the time when those MBT or the main battle tanks were supplied. Now what is happening is, because they are taking a beating, so they wanted to show that the Russian arms industry is in shambles. They cannot keep pace. They are not state of the art. So to put them down, also the Western European tanks are being brought in. So that is one thing which Russia feels, that they are being pressurized into it. So they must give a befitting reply. That is the way I see it. But also, you mentioned at the beginning of in your report the meeting of the Davos meeting of the summit.
I'll ask you about that. I'll ask you about that a little later. Sure, I'll ask you about that a little later. Let me bring in Dr. Pillai once again. Do you see a change in the Russian strategy after General Gerasimov was named the new commander recently?
Definitely, the tactics have really undergone a lot of change, and in terms of aggression, also the inclusion of the Wagner group, which is quite brutal in that ways. In fact, you see their hands. It is believed that the salt and the gypsum mines is something that is driving the group head to, because it's the access to this, and the Russians are not going to spare any effort. And I agree with the ambassador. The entry of the British and German assistance is also going to open doors for possibility of the Belarus front being opened up. Because if you recall, much before this war had actually started in February, large amount of troops are actually stationed in Belarus. So we must understand, instead of increasing the ambit of the war, if they show a little bit of wisdom, what was shown by Kennedy and Khrushchev in 1962, when the Bay of Pigs incident took place in Cuba and the world was brought back from the brink of a nuclear war. This is not being shown currently by the Western side. It's really in trying to understand and trying to push the limits of the war and prolong these things instead of trying to find a solution. Now, you've seen that in World War I, World War II also, there was the siege of Stalingrad, which was there, and how the Russians hit back at the Germans and destroyed them in the winter. That turned out to be their Hitler's death knell. So it's important to understand that as a country, Russia has immense depth, and despite all the sanctions, which was actually, if you see, it was it was individually targeted. In every war before this, there was never individuals targeted. There were never people were targeted. People close to Putin, the Russian oligarchs and everything. This became a very dirty personal war, and that's why the costs are also high, because the ruling elite are not going to meekly surrender into these kind of bullying tactics which is there. That maturity which was shown between Khrushchev and Kennedy is definitely missing, particularly from the Western side, which had actually enjoyed a relative dividend of the World War, the peace that came after that. The world progressed, and that is something.
Sure, but the world is multipolar now. Ambassador Soni, so coming back to the World Economic Forum and Davos, what do you expect from it? Clearly, the countries in attendance are not on Russia's side.
Well, they will definitely come up with something very strict and much more strong message to convey across to Russia, because this is one of the, there will be not just political leaders, but economic leaders also, whose decision could have a crippling effect on already Russia's tottering economy. So what they are saying is there is a political, there is a strategic, and then there is a commercial angle involved. So three of them coming together, conveying a message, strong message, that if you do not mend your ways, if you do not come around to settling the issue, it will be a problem. So I think it's going to be tough for Russia to face what follows from there, and they are probably ready for that, and that's why to subvert any of the things, they are taking kind of an attitude which is very aggressive, very preemptive, I say so.
Okay. A final question, Dr. Pillai, is there a likely exit strategy scenario at the current time? What's the most likely scenario?
I think the Russians are not going to withdraw from the Luhansk and the Donetsk region, not Crimea. What the Ukrainians also did in destroying the bridge connecting them is also an unfair, act of war, which is actually so. There's nothing. Both sides have not given an opportunity to each other to call for a thing, and it is definitely a stalemate in terms of because it's not just Russia versus Ukraine. It was Russia versus the rest of the world of the alliances. So Putin is definitely not going to be withdrawing from the territories that he'd actually taken over, the ones that he right in the very beginning. And I think
Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. They are the. Yeah.
So I don't foresee like going back to pre-24 February lines anymore. The boundaries of Ukraine is altered permanently, unless, of course, the war goes larger beyond the border between Russia and Ukraine. That will be disastrous for the rest of the world, and I think that's something people would be. It'd be nicer for the Ukrainian and the rest of the world that we have a ceasefire as in where it is as of now.
Okay. Final word from you, Ambassador Soni. The Russians are saying that they are defending their own territory, basically. So this is the situation as it is after the annexation, especially of Luhansk and Donetsk, where they actually believe that these are their own territories. The other two may not be, to the same level of the fact that they think that those two are not as as much a part of Russia as this. But with this idea, there's no way that they're going to give up these territories.
Well, my response is you are right, because there are certain strategic areas which are around their bases, which are in the Black Sea, particularly which they annexed from Russia, from Ukraine 7-8 years back. So their interest is to hang on to that. The others are for bargaining chip, like Solidar, etc. There are small insignificant places But just to give a bargaining chip, they're saying, okay, we'll hang on to this and you will give up on areas which are not of strategic importance to them. So that is probably their idea of giving the attack and then saying we are withdrawing, but you should agree to our terms on so far as the other areas which are of more strategic concern to them.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Vidya Bhushan Soni and Colonel Dr. D.P.K. Pillai for enlightening us on this subject. Moving on to our next story, the U.S. confidential documents row has taken yet another turn. Now, the U.S. President Joe Biden's counsel has revealed that 5 additional pages of classified documents with classified markings were discovered at the president's Wilmington, Delaware home. Biden's lawyers say that they immediately handed these documents to the Justice Department officials. The U.S. President Joe Biden is facing a Department of Justice investigation after his lawyers acknowledged that they had found classified documents at his Delaware residence and an office in Washington, D.C. The Justice Department official Robert Hur was appointed on Thursday to lead the DOJ probe. The announcement came just a few days after news broke that classified documents had been found at Biden's private office less than a week before the midterm elections in November, a discovery that led the DOJ to launch an initial inquiry. Of course, these documents date back to the time when he was vice president, because the current documents, as he is president, he is very much entitled to have them. Now, the Indian Army celebrated its 75th Army Day in Bengaluru. The celebrations were held outside Delhi for the first time in history. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that India's defence sector has emerged as an attractive investment destination. He hailed the valour of Indian Jawans. Dhruv and Rudra helicopters, they flew past, and the Army Chief awarded Sena medals for individual acts of gallantry. And he said that the Army is maintaining a strong defence posture along the line of actual control.
The Indian Army celebrated its 75th Army Day in Bengaluru on Sunday. This year, the event took place outside Delhi for the first time since the celebration started in 1949. The Army Day parade commenced with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Madras Engineering Group War Memorial by the Chief of Army Staff, General Manoj Pandey. The Army Chief also reviewed the Army Day parade in Bengaluru. The Army Day event was addressed by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. The Defence Minister emphasised that India has emerged as an attractive investment destination at the global level. Rajnath Singh added that this fact is being acknowledged by global agencies and other global business leaders.
सुरक्षा व्यवस्था का राष्ट्र की प्रगति में अहम योगदान है। आपने अनेक एजेंसीज के सर्वे देखे होंगे जो ये बताते हैं कि भारत दुनिया की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बनने के साथ साथ दुनिया में फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग मेजर इकोनॉमीज में से एक के रूप में लगातार आगे बढ़ रहा है। हमारी सुरक्षा व्यवस्था की मजबूती का एक प्रमाण यह भी है, पिछले कुछ वर्षों में भारत दुनिया के लिए एक पसंदीदा और भरोसेमंद इन्वेस्टमेंट डेस्टिनेशन बनकर उभरा है। ऐसा बस मैं नहीं कह रहा हूं, बल्कि दुनिया की बड़ी एजेंसी और ग्लोबल बिजनेस लीडर्स ये सभी ये बात मानते हैं। बीते फाइनेंशियल ईयर में भारत ने 83.57 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर का हाईएस्ट ईवर एफडीआई इनफ्लो रिकॉर्ड किया है।
Noting that security challenges have changed in the last 10 years, the Defence Minister stressed that our army is prepared to meet any eventuality.
बदलती चुनौतियों के साथ साथ हमारी सेना भी लगातार बदलती गई और इसने हर मोर्चे पर अपने आप को साबित करके दिखाया है। दुश्मनों की चाहे जितनी भी चालें क्यों न हों, दुश्मनों ने कितना भी बड़ा जाल क्यों न बिछाया हो, पर हमारी सेनाओं ने हमेशा बड़ी सूझबूझ, धैर्य और जहां जरूरत हुई है वहां शौर्य दिखाकर दुश्मनों का मनोबल गिराया है और उन पर विजय प्राप्त की है।
This year, Army Day celebrations featured a flypast by the Army Aviation Dhruv and Rudra helicopters. Other breathtaking activities included motorcycle stunts by the ASC Tornadoes team and skydiving by the paratroopers. The event also featured tent pegging, daredevil jumps, band displays, taekwondo and other martial art displays among other activities. Earlier, while addressing the event, The Chief of Army Staff said that the Indian Army is maintaining a strong defense posture along the line of actual control and is ready to tackle any contingency. General Pandey also announced to convert the battle squads into integrated battle groups in an effort towards structuring and optimization of the force.
फोर्स स्ट्रक्चरिंग और ऑप्टिमाइजेशन के प्रयास में हम अपने लड़ाई के दस्तों को इंटीग्रेटेड बैटल ग्रुप्स के रूप में बदलने की योजना बना रहे हैं, जो भविष्य के युद्ध में प्रभावशाली ढंग से योगदान देंगे। पुराने एस्टैब्लिशमेंट्स और यूनिट्स को भंग किया जा रहा है या उचित बदलाव के साथ नया रूप दिया जा रहा है। टीथ टू टेल रेशियो को प्रभावी बनाने के लिए मॉडर्नाइजेशन और टेक्नोलॉजी इन्फ्यूजन से सेना को राइट साइज किया जाएगा ताकि ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज या मैन पावर का सटीक प्रयोग किया जा सके।
On the occasion, the Army Chief also awarded Sena medals for individual acts of gallantry. Every year, the 15th of January is commemorated as Army Day to remember the occasion when General M.M. Cariappa took over the command of the Indian Army from General Sir F.R.R. Butcher, the last British Commander-in-Chief in 1949, and became the first Indian Commander-in-Chief of independent India. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
President Draupadi Murmu in a tweet said that on Army Day, let us recall the countless stories of Indian Army soldiers' sacrifices. They have always pushed the frontiers of valor and courage and also acted as saviors in times of calamities. I salute all brave soldiers of the Indian Army and their families on this occasion. While addressing an event, the Prime Minister also remembered the contribution of the Indian Army in safeguarding the country and protecting the borders of the country. Prime Minister said that every Indian is proud of the Indian Army.
आज सेना दिवस भी है। हर भारतीय को अपनी सेना पर गर्व है। देश की रक्षा में, देश की सीमाओं की रक्षा में भारतीय सेना का योगदान, भारतीय सेना का शौर्य अतुलनीय है। मैं सभी सैनिकों को, पूर्व सैनिकों को, उनके परिवारों को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं।
In Uttarakhand's Joshimath town, two hotels, Hotel Malari Inn and Hotel Mount View, were demolished in view of the threat of landslides and increasing cracks in houses in the marked area. So far, 723 houses in the town have developed cracks. Also, the Apex Court has scheduled a hearing with the plea to declare Joshimath subsistent crisis as a national disaster. They're doing so on Monday. They're going to have that hearing on Monday. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi is himself monitoring the Joshimath situation closely. A team from the Prime Minister's office visited the area affected by the subsidence. And also what's happening is the area where the cracks have developed in the houses and water seepage has taken place there. And these are thoroughly inspected for about 2 hours.
PMO team द्वारा यहाँ जोशीमठ
PMO team inspected the local situation in Joshimath town today. All those houses that have come under land subsidence or have developed cracks, as well as the water seepage which is happening below, was inspected. The team inspected for almost 2 hours.
हो रहा है नीचे, उसका भी निरीक्षण किया गया। करीब 2 घंटे उन्हें पूरे ग्राउंड पे इंस्पेक्शन किया।
The city of Pune will be hosting the G20 First Infrastructure Working Group meeting on Monday, and all preparations are in place. The theme of the meeting is Building Cities of Tomorrow, Sustainable, Resilient and Inclusive. This will be a huge opportunity for economic growth.
Well, the first infrastructure working group meeting is going to be held, and the G20's IWG meeting is held in Pune on 16th and 17th. The stage is all set, the city is all decked up. We can see the flags of various countries. If we are talking about the infrastructure working group, we know for the fact that urbanization poses a key challenge to whole world, and not just in India but the entire world. And this particular meeting will deliberate on various issues that is posed by the urbanization. And on the lines of building cities of tomorrow, that is the theme of this particular meeting, sustainable, resilient and inclusive. So all these topics are to be deliberated over the next 2 days, and we will see that some key discussion, some key solution comes out of this infrastructure working group meeting. Shama Mishra, DD India, Pune, Maharashtra.
And as we said, the G20 First Infrastructure Working Group meeting will begin in Pune on Monday, and Solomon Arokyaraj, who is the Joint Secretary Department of Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Finance, spoke to Shama Mishra of DD India and shared the agenda of the meeting. He mentioned as migration to urban areas and issues related to such movement is going to be one of the main topics of focus. And he also said that digital will be an important topic of discussion for planning and deliverables.
Secretary of Ministry of Finance with us. Sir, since this is the first meeting, how are we going to, on what topics are we going to deliberate with the delegation, and which all countries, which all member institutes or invited institutions would be here?
There will be 7 sessions that happen over the next 2 days, and there will be a sideline workshop handled by Asian Development Bank, which will discuss about the options for financing the cities. And the focus will be on private sector financing, because government is shouldering majority of the urban financing investments so far. So how to get private sector, how to get the multilateral institutions to contribute more, and also how to find out creative instruments of financing urban development is going to be a key theme.
So like you mentioned, there'll be a theme which will have all the aspects, be it financing, then be it understanding how to help the citizens who are staying in the urban areas, because urbanization is posing a lot of problems. So the resilience and the sustainable part, and also the inclusiveness part, how do we go about on?
As the population increases in the urban area, there will be pressure on the natural resource base, be it land, water, or the air quality, etc. So there will be a set of principles, like the Honorable PM has already spoken about life concept, that is lifestyle for environment. So that will be the key focus around which we will discuss about protecting our natural base, natural resource base, etc. And on the resilience, we will discuss as what are the kind of shocks that each and every city undergoes. It can be because of a climate change element, or it can be because of a pandemic, or it can be related to economic shock as well. So there are principles that are going to be discussed around that.
How are we working on the digital infrastructure, because it will definitely help the digital divide, and we can help the rural parts as well of the country or any other country?
So digital is a very important agenda, and India is a leader in that, as we have demonstrated in India Stack, the UPI, the Aadhaar, everything. So as far as the urban service delivery is concerned, the important agenda for the tech will be how do we remove the barriers for every citizen to access service in an equitable manner. So what are the kinds of technologies, what are the kinds of options are available for planning as well as service delivery will be a key component in the discussion.
With camera person Rohan Gauli, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Pune, Maharashtra.
The World Health Organization has appealed to China to keep releasing information about the wave of COVID infections that's going on there, after the government announced nearly 60,000 deaths since early December, following weeks of complaints that it was failing to tell the world what was happening. Meanwhile, the medical facilities across China have continued to optimize a graded and classified medical service system in recent days to ensure all patients seeking treatment are properly tended to. Now, the National Health Commission in China has said that the numbers of fever clinics, the visits and hospital emergency department visits are both showing steady downward trends, as hospitals are also seeing infected patients gradually making a recovery and going back home. Medical facilities are coordinating with each other to send patients in stabilized conditions to smaller hospitals to recover and transfer seriously ill patients to bigger hospitals for further treatment. Following the relevant treatment optimizations, the nation's capital, Beijing, has made proper medical resource allocation for the Spring Festival holiday season, that is to respond to residents' medical treatment needs. Meanwhile, Hong Kong has raised the daily quota for inland-bound travellers, as local residents need to visit inland they have surged ahead of the Spring Festival. The Haksar government announced, that's the Hong Kong government, they announced on Saturday that they have noticed a remarkable rise in citizens' needs to visit inland via land crossings ahead of the Spring Festival. So they've decided to increase the daily inbound travel quota from 50,000 to 65,000 at designated land crossings from the 18th to the 21st of January, and increasing the one-way inbound daily travel quota via the Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. This is from 1,000 to 2,000. The Hong Kong government has also said that all crossings have been operating well since the implementation of the first phase of the resumption of cross-border traveling between Hong Kong and the mainland on January 8. Tens of thousands of Israelis demonstrated in 3 major cities on Saturday against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial reform plans, with organizers accusing him of undermining democratic rule weeks after his re-election. Now, he was on top of a religious nationalist coalition with a solid parliamentary majority, and Netanyahu is now in his 6th term, and he wants to rein in the Supreme Court in what he has described as a restoration of the balance of the 3 branches of government, after the President Isaac Herzog appealed to the polarized politicians to lower the temperatures around them in debates. Organizers of the demonstrations sought to strike a note of national unity. Israeli media put the number in attendance at some 80,000, with thousands more at protests in Jerusalem and Haifa. The UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan received his South Korean counterpart Yoon Suk Yeol on Sunday at the start of a 4-day visit. After the welcome ceremony, Yoon and Al Nahyan, they had a meeting with the delegations present. The UAE has decided to invest $30 billion in South Korea as the 2 countries seek to expand economic cooperation. Seoul's finance ministry said that the $30 billion investment, it would be led by sovereign wealth funds. Now, at their summit, the 2 countries also signed 13 memoranda of understanding, including an agreement between the state-run Korea Development Bank and the Abu Dhabi State Fund Mubadala. They are going to cooperate for investment in South Korean companies. Let's get you additional world news in quick time in our World News Update.
The World Economic Forum's annual meeting will kickstart in the city of Davos, Switzerland on January 16 and will continue till January 20. The 53rd annual event's theme is Cooperation in a Fragmented World, where business leaders, politicians, economists and stakeholders are expected to discuss various aspects of global challenges. The present meeting is crucial amidst the present crisis after the COVID-19 pandemic, growing US-China hostility and Russia's invasion of Ukraine and others. The Swiss government will deploy as many as 5,000 military personnel to support the local police. Peru's government declared a state of emergency in the capital Lima and 3 other regions due to protests against President Dina Boluarte that have claimed at least 42 lives in recent weeks. According to a decree published in the official gazette, the measure in force for 30 days authorizes the army to intervene to maintain order and suspend several constitutional rights such as freedom of movements and assembly. In addition to the capital, the state of emergency covers the regions of Cusco and Puno and Port of Callao adjacent to Lima. US President Joe Biden approved an emergency declaration for California on Saturday, after storms that pounded the Golden State since 26 December killed at least 19 people and brought floods, power outages, mudslides, evacuations and road closures. The White House in a statement said Biden ordered federal aid to supplement state, tribal and local recovery efforts in the area affected by the storms. The president's action makes federal funding available to affected individuals in Merced, Sacramento and Santa Cruz counties. Biden also approved an emergency declaration for Alabama on Sunday after at least 9 people died in a tornado that destroyed homes and knocked out power to tens of thousands in the southeastern United States.
Makar Sankranti, which marks the astronomical event of the sun entering Capricorn, is being celebrated today, the 15th of January. The festivities include colorful decorations, children going house to house, melas, dances, kite flying, bonfires and feasts, among others. Now, the tourists on the MV Ganga Vilas, they also soaked in the spirit of Makar Sankranti.
On the auspicious occasion of Makar Sankranti, the tourists of MV Ganga Vilas were given a glimpse of India's rich heritage and history on Sunday. The tourists were given a grand welcome at the famous Ram Rekha Ghat in Buxar. They also visited the Sita Ram Upadhyay Museum. The museum was established in 1979 and is one of the largest repositories in Buxar. The museum houses various types of archaeological objects, coins and manuscripts.
It's a great experience because I'm surprised that you have such a big collection from this age. And you know, I love the pictures, the statues from women. I took a lot of photos, pictures for myself. I bring it home at Switzerland. And it's such a nice museum. It's so clean and very good presented.
The museum offers a lot of archaeological small details and statues starting from like hundreds of years ago. I didn't expect something like that. I didn't know what to expect, but I was very surprised to see all those archaeological artifacts.
Museum was earlier known as Buxar Museum. It was renamed after the local resident Sita Ram Upadhyay, who collected a contrasting range of artifacts. The terracotta collection of the Maurya period and gold coin of Gupta period are also part of the museum.
This series of gold coins starting a new history, starting a new chapter in Indian numismatic. And here is the most famous Gupta coins, that's king with bow and arrow is representing here. But apart from this, it is said in Indian history that they use various kind of depiction in the coins. But in is the museum now we representing the most famous coin of Gupta period.
The state of Bihar is known for its rich culture and ancient marvels. The city of Buxar also reflects the state's vibrant culture. Union Minister Ashwani Chaubey met the tourists and said that the country has a massive potential of cultural tourism.
प्रधानमंत्री जी ने वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की बात कही है, वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर। ये सचमुच में ये सागर माला, ये जो भाजपा का कार्यक्रम मतलब कहा जाए, उसके माध्यम से जो ये आज का गंगा विलास की जो यात्रा है, ये गंगा माता ये पूरे विश्व में हमारा विश्व की जो 21वीं शताब्दी का भारत विश्व गुरु बनेगा, उसकी झांकी धीरे धीरे दिखाई पड़ रहा है.
The MV Ganga Vilas cruise has now set its sail for Doriganj. Tourists will visit Chirand archaeological site on Monday. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
An update now from the Hockey World Cup, and in the first match played on Sunday, Spain defeated Wales 5-1 to open their account in Pool D at the Birsa Munda Stadium in Rourkela. They came into the match after losing to India, and Spain outplayed Wales, who were making their debut in this edition of the Hockey World Cup. And in the second match, India and England, they played out a draw in a Group D fixture at the Birsa Munda Stadium in Rourkela. India were aiming to top Pool D and hoping to beat England and register their first win against England after a long time, and they failed to do so. Now, both the teams missed plenty of chances. England's goalkeeper Oliver Payne was felicitated with the Player of the Match award for his outstanding saves. And some cricket news now. India thrashed Sri Lanka ruthlessly in the third and final ODI by a big margin of 317 runs in Thiruvananthapuram on Sunday. And with this, India have now got a clean sweep of this series, 3-0. And in the process have created a world record, in fact, by registering the biggest ever win by any margin in an ODI. Shubman Gill and Virat Kohli both hit centuries. Mohammad Siraj took 4 wickets to dismantle the opposition. It was a pure run fest with Gill scoring 116 runs in 97 balls, and Kohli joined him to slam his 46th ODI ton. He smashed an unbeaten 166 in 110 balls to put India in a commanding position with 390 on the board, and Sri Lanka failed to get anything going. Their innings was wrapped up for 73 runs. Virat Kohli, en route to his 46th century, also broke Sachin Tendulkar's record for scoring the most centuries in ODIs at home. And with that good news, we conclude News Night for tonight. Thank you for your time and company. Namaskar.